Welcome to Teach Me to Dad. I'm Kurtis. Hope you've had a good break over Christmas and the New Year. I got a little bit more coming up for this season, but we'll be wrapping up this season real soon. If you have been listening, I'd love to hear from you. What things have you found helpful? What have you been thinking about as you're parenting? What's this kind of process sparked in your mind as you think about this? Send me a message on Teach Me to Dad on Instagram, or I've got a link in the description to our website that you can send us a message through that. Now, let me talk up this week's dad chat for a second before we get into it, because this is a great chat. So, two guys, older dads than me, Geoff, Steve, both have parented through lots, and for this conversation, I talked to them particularly about two things: about neurodiversity in their kids and about foster care. They've both had experience in that in their kids, and quite a lot between the two of them. Now, in the conversation, I lean more towards conversations around neurodiversity. That's kind of the space me and my family enter kind of experience, and is a big part for us: autism, ADHD, that kind of space. So I had lots of practical questions for them, and if that's something that goes on in your family, that one of your kids is neurodiverse, then you'll love this. And I found hearing about their foster caring really incredible. Not something I've been a part of, but they both had a lot of experience in that, and there was lots of very, very helpful things that I want to think into my family about from that. So these guys gave me lots of their time. They were sharp, they were honest. They didn't always agree, which made for a good range of perspectives on some things. It was very helpful. So I've got to say at the outset, I wish I could give these guys the proper honour they deserve, because them and their wives have just been doing such an admirable job in their families, in their households. Faithful servants of Jesus. And so I trust that Jesus sees and will honour them for their faithfulness. But this was just great to be able to sit down with the two of them. So I really recommend that you stick with this, even if you don't have any special needs in your family and you think, maybe this is not quite one for me. I'd strongly encourage you to have a listen for 1,000 reasons. But generally, I think talking to these guys was just very inspirational for family life. But there was just every answer I really thought was a very helpful insight into parenting. So anyway, there you go. Thank you, Geoff. Thank you, Steve, for your time. And thank you, Michelle and Liz as well, for the way you, with your husbands, have been thinking about raising these kids, and the wisdom that has come to me and come to those who are listening as well. Before we get into it, I want to just give a shout out to Fruit. They're our sponsor for the show. They're a Bible reading app. And this new year, I imagine lots of you are thinking, how do I get into the Bible regularly? I'd recommend trying out this app Fruit. It's an app that wants to help make daily Bible reading a reality for you. Knowing that life is busy, it's hard to do this. They usually have a wait list, but that's removed for New Year's sign-ups, so it's a wonderful time to sign up. Check them out. The link is in the description of this podcast. Try out Fruit to help you get into the Bible regularly. Over to our dads. Geoff, Steve, teach me to dad.
Teach me to dad, I am a dad and I need some help. Teach me to dad, I'll never learn this by myself. Teach me to dad, I am a dad.
Well, to start with, keen to just give us a little insight, tell us about your family, yourself, to introduce yourselves.
So I'm Geoff. I married, have 3 kids who are 22, 21 and 8. I work at a school doing IT stuff, and in the past I've done foster care, done about 100 foster kids in between number 2 and 3.
Tell us about that and that process and why you did that and how that's been. That's been a big thing for you guys.
Yeah, so that's been a big thing. That's been, I think it's been a great thing. Like, it's been good for our family to know that, hey, you're not always number one in the family,
Mm.
that sometimes you've got to give to others. Probably started off with my sister who adopted from overseas, and basically me and my wife had always thought about doing something foster adoption long term, but we basically just had a spare room in the house, and I couldn't come up with a decent reason to say no.
That's cool. Yeah, it's cool. Steve?
Yes, my name's Steve. Married to Michelle, and I've got 4 kids: 24, 22, 18, and 10. So, and we have the grand total of 2 foster kids have come through our house, and still got one, Mal, and yeah, he's the 10-year-old. Love him to bits.
Yeah.
And why? My wife Michelle has been very keen to foster throughout our marriage, and when we got to 3 kids of our own, and they were getting older, she proposed that we enter the arena of foster care, because there's a huge demand out there, and I am willing to back her on things like that, because she's far smarter than me at things like that. And yeah, it's been a journey, that's for sure.
Mm. Yeah, huge. There's so much in this that I'm intrigued by and think there would be things to learn from. Maybe at the outset, um, and talk as just as much as you're comfortable. I'm quite mindful about talking about kids. That's funny sometimes. They're not in the room and they're not. Anyway, so, but one of the things I'm keen to get your thoughts on is kind of how to be helpful for kids that have needs that are different to just quote unquote regular kids. So, can you give me a sense of what kind of additional needs have existed in your household that you've tried to navigate as a dad? Does that make sense? Yeah, go for it,
Yeah,
Steve.
look, I have discovered the whole world of acronyms. Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing. We had no idea. And yeah, look, for the first 3 rounds of raising my daughters, they ticked the boxes as far as being compliant, and they fit well with school, and they tried to, more often than not, go along to get along. They were very yeah, just easy kids to raise, I suppose. Not to say that it's been rainbows and unicorns. It's been like, there's been certainly plenty of challenges, but with Mal, we have discovered, yeah, that there's been extra challenges that we weren't expecting. Yeah, and a lot of it is it's physiological. There's been trauma in his past, and now that has, as he gets older, it's just manifesting in more and more ways and different ways, and we're just kind of playing it by ear a lot. But my wife is very good at seeking out wisdom from people who've walked this path before. She's very good at reading from blogs and books, and just listening to material that tries to give us an insight into how to manage it.
Mm. Yeah. That's simple. Yeah, good.
Yeah, so probably all 3 of my kids, I'd say, are on the spectrum. Some more than others, some higher processing. I've found, like, at church, it's like sometimes you just need to, where they wouldn't sit still at all, they'd be running up and down the aisle during the sermon or before the sermon, and you've just got to know when to cut your losses. It's like, what's my end game? Is
Yeah.
my end game to get them to hate church? Is my end game to sit next to me during church? Is it to stand up during the singing? And I think it's just a slow progress of what's my current goal, and where I'm going to win today.
Yes. Yeah, it's good. Sometimes you got to leave space for the rest of the church to learn to be accommodating when you, yes, it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's simple. Yeah, good. Um, has how has being a Christian and the mindset that that brings shaped how you guys think about kids that are different and kids that are in need of help? Particularly because you've both kind of had both additional needs and maybe kids in more immediate needing a home needs. How has your Christian faith and perspective shaped how you've approached that?
Yeah, I think it's just God loved us and he gave his son for us. And so whatever we do for someone else is far less than what he's done for us. So yeah, I think we need to be accommodative to whatever needs they have and to try and address them and help them with it because, hey, we're not perfect.
Mm. Yeah, it's helpful. Yeah, anything to add on that, Steve?
Yeah, look, God's mercies are new every morning, and we come to depend on Him to be gracious and forgiving and slow to anger, and for us as broken individuals, and we see in our kids that they're just a smaller version of the same thing, and with areas of different need to us. So it really does help for me personally to have my understanding of how much has been sacrificed for me, and Jesus is the ultimate role model. So he said, suffer the little children to come unto me, and we've got some little children that have come unto us now, and we just try to model Jesus to them.
Mm.
It's not so successful sometimes, but thankfully we have a very forgiving Heavenly Father who can take up where we fall short.
Mm.
That's just a real blessing.
Yeah. Geoff, I'm interested in your thoughts, right? So my kids are 6, 4, and 1 at the
Yep.
moment. So I like to think we're still unwrapping them, getting to know them, peeling it back. So we've unwrapped one acronym with one of our kids. So we've unwrapped some spectrum, one of our
Yeah.
kids' ASD. And I reckon there's some more unwrapping we have ahead of us, understanding these kids. How do you explain autism to friends or people that don't quite understand it? I'm just curious.
I say, look, it's a superpower that they can be really highly focused in certain things and they can be really unfocused on other things. It's just being able to direct that focus in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful. That's good. We have this book at home that we've got that we've been helpful for our kids. It's called All Cats Are on the Autism Spectrum. And I really like it. And it's like, and so we talk to our kids about dog brain and cat brains and like, oh, you've got a cat brain, you've got a dog brain, just trying to get that sense of like, there's strengths, there's differences, there's things at play. That's just really what we're talking about.
And then I found with like our eldest child, who's a pharmacist, that she likes doing all of the jobs that other people don't doing.
Yeah.
She's like happy. It's like, yeah, can I order all these things
Yes.
and put them into order, all these scripts? And it's like everyone else hates doing that. But it's like they love her because she wants to do that.
Yes. Oh, yes. So broad question, maybe to you first, Steve. What as a Christian dad seeking to influence, raise kids, like on one level, every kid's a human. We have the same aims for every kid. We want them to know their God who loves them and cares for them. We want them to trust Jesus. Like all of that's exactly the same. There's a lot that's the same. And feel free to speak to things that you think are worth mentioning that's the same. What have you found is different as you seek to raise kids when you're trying to take into account needs, differences, kids that are quote unquote different?
Yeah, there's
Every kid's different. Yeah.
just have to try and be more understanding, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So what has worked in the past might not work in the future with, like, for example, teaching the Bible to my girls. They were very compliant and happy to sit down for family devotions and read God's word with us. But with number 4, we find that is a almost impossible aim, and so we have to change our expectations. And like at the moment, my aim is to teach him to memorize the Lord's Prayer. It doesn't sound like much, but it's a big step. In the past, he's been very resistant to even praying. Seems to have an unexpected resistance to that. But having said that, in the last probably 6 to 8 months, it's like a switch has been flicked, and he's very happy to pray now. And he says amen at the end of prayer times, and which is really encouraging. And so it's kind of a baby steps thing that we change our expectations. So we found it helpful to only expect 2/3 of their chronological age and their emotional age. So I just do some quick sums and then think, what would I expect a 7-year-old to be at? And then we aim for that. And it is a really slow process of getting things to sink in, but they do, and it's amazing. We are constantly surprised as well on occasions where something we think has just been completely ignored or gone over his head will just come out of the blue, and he'll say something like, Jesus, did die on the cross for us, and wow, where did that come from? That's way more understanding or perceived understanding that we would expect, and yet so we are surprised, but just bringing it down to the level that he can operate at is what we found is most effective.
That's helpful, Steve. A couple of things in that stood out to me is the being understanding, and so you're trying to understand this child, not the norm. Understanding them and changing your expectations. You know what I mean? Like the idea of we all sit down and reading the Bible looks like this. That's a expectation, not a biblical mandate. You know what I mean? That's actually helping shake out of us what is cultural or assumed, or that's something real helpful.
Yes, my own experience of had to just go back and revisit that and think it's no longer relevant for this new situation, for this new new soul that God has created.
Yes.
In his image bearer is different to the previous ones.
Yeah.
And so it's still precious, but we've just got to be prepared to do it differently.
Yeah, that's helpful. Geoff, thoughts on that? Things that look different that you noticed
Yeah. So I find just having shared interests or shared, shared coping mechanisms with my child that I understand. It's like, oh, you're the same as me in this way. So it's like, I can understand that you might need some space before we come and talk about things. Or I find that he can actually be looking away instead of having eye contact, but still really concentrating on what you're saying, which I'm like, that infuriates me. But I'm like, I know that that's how he works, that he can actually...
everyone around him thinks he's not engaged. Like a teacher
that he's not engaged,
disengaged. Yeah. But that's not true.
That's not true. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why we started homeschooling him, because it's like, it's no one fit for each child.
Yeah.
The invention of the fidget spinner has made, learning possible now. And it's not just those little spinny things, but there's squeeze balls and there's lots of tactile toys, I suppose, but as soon as their hands or body is engaged, whether running or fiddling or squeezing, or suddenly that gives their brain a chance to start listening and focusing. Without that, they're kind of, I don't know, just chaotic. So just simple things like giving them something to fiddle with whilst they're meant to be sitting still or listening makes an enormous difference.
Oh yeah.
I was a skeptic until I experienced it for myself, and it's remarkable.
Well, you've only got to sit a bunch of kids outside and wait 5 seconds till you realise everyone's picked up a leaf or a stick and is snapping and ripping and, you know what I mean, doing nature's fidget toys.
Yeah. I found at church, like Dexter struggled with the loud noises at church. So it's like, do I put my hands on his ears while we sing? It's like, yeah, that's fine. Or just hand on his head to keep him still.
Yeah.
Or think about where I'm going to sit. Am I going to sit up the front? Am I going to sit up the back today? Depending on how he's going. And try and slowly move into where you want to get him long term.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, that's helpful. How much, both of you, do you want your kids to fit into a world versus learn to be themselves? Does that make sense? Like, I think about that with my kid, I'm like, you're not neurotypical. And so there's this constant thing of how much do we need to learn to slot you into how society functions versus society's filled with expectations that are dumb and don't fit everyone. And you be yourself, and, you know, society needs to grow up and be more flexible. Do you know what I mean? How much do you try to, in your mind, think, I want to help them mold, fit in versus be themselves?
Oh, I think it's 90% be themselves and 10%, hey, you actually do have to fit in with these social norms. So you can't be absent from the world.
Yeah, yes.
You've got to relate to people. Like that's one of the things Dexter struggles with, relating to people. It's like, look, in sporting groups that he does, it's like you actually do have to sit in line or do things at the same time as other people. You can't just go off and do things at your own pace. You can't be that much of an individual that you don't conform to certain things.
Yeah, it's helpful. What do you reckon, 90-10?
I don't know. I'd push back and pick maybe 60-40 or 70-30 because society, although their expectations are sometimes unrealistic for kids like ours, still there's just there's aspects of society that it's good for them to learn to go to learn. It's like it might not be easy for them, but it's worthwhile for them to learn simple things. If somebody says hello to you, you look them in the eye and say hello back. And that's a real challenge for Mal, but I'm constantly at him because we don't operate in a vacuum, and those other people can go away thinking, what a rude little kid, or you know, and just for some learned behaviour, we've got to keep at it, but that simple things like that will make it easy for them in the long run, because it's otherwise it's just going to be a battle for the whole of their life. So while they're young, little things that you can just get more habitual, right? If someone offers you their hand, you don't leave them hanging. You shake it back, you know. And again, that's a challenge for us, but we're slowly making progress. Just courtesies, courtesies. And I know he's never going to fit the mold the way society would like it, but just for his own ease of transition into adulthood, little things like that. So.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, there's a couple practical things I want to get your thoughts on. Actually, before I do, tell me how much this fits with you, right? Since we've kind of been thinking about this space with our eldest, with autism, I feel like our family, we're like, we're an autism family now. And it's really shaped, like, we're constantly thinking about it, and we're trying, like, and it shapes our family life a lot, that I think we connect a lot more to families that are in that same space and all of that. Has that been similar for you guys? How's it shaped how you think about yourself as a dad, you as a family? Like, has it been, does how I say that resonate or not really resonate?
For me, probably not so much resonating. I think initially I thought there'd be a lot of stigma with getting diagnosed, which I found not too much stigma at all. Like my eldest has actually gone and got herself tested as an adult because we didn't do it when she was a child, just to help her out with those communication skills that or the social stuff that she just goes straight over her head, and she
Yeah.
needs a rule book to know. It's like if someone asks you this, you need to respond back with a question. But yeah, so not so much with me.
Yeah, cool.
I think it does resonate in that when you first start out, you're tempted to think this is new, not just for me, for everybody. I'm unique, and this struggle is all my own. But then you kind of discover that there are other families that have exactly the same challenges, and there's a strength in numbers. You know, to have other people who can say that's exactly my experience. That's exactly what we've had happen. This is what our household looks like between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. It's chaotic, right? We can't achieve any homework because his brain, and like Mal also has ADHD as well as ASD. So we notice when his medications have worn off, and anything resembling schoolwork, homework is just impossible. So, but to have contact with other families who have the same situation, you can kind of brainstorm with each other and pick up good ideas. And so that's, my wife especially, definitely comes up to me all the time and says, oh, look at this, like these people have got exactly the same thing going on in their house, and this is what they do to solve it. And you go, oh yeah, that's not a bad idea, we might give it a go. Yeah. And so many of the ideas that we've put in place in our household have come from other people discovering that it's worked for them. And yeah, it's nice to feel that you're not alone, that there's a shared burden there in trying to work out our little kids, and yeah, they're still precious, they're still normal, but only in their own way.
Yeah.
And we've just got to get that new normal thinking.
Yeah, it's cool. So I'm keen to get your thoughts on 4 practical areas, and then any more that you want to flesh into, right? So one of them came up a bit before. Reading the Bible looks a bit different. And something you said stood out to me as something I've been pondering too. How have you found your kids engage with the Bible differently, or like experience the gospel differently? Do you see any of that play out differently?
For Dexter, he loves just going to sleep with the Bible. So we'll just put the Bible on, and he'll just listen to that all night long. And he engages with that really well. I've found breakfast time, if he's eating, that's also a good time to read the Bible with him, ask him some questions. I find if you don't push too hard with the questions and don't expect too much, that's when you'll get him really engaging well with it. And not being, yes, you have to have the answer for everything. Just thinking, yep, if you don't have the answer, I'll give you the answer, that's fine. As long as you're listening, all good.
Yeah, yes. So what do you think about this, right? I've been pondering this a lot lately, right? So a big thing for my eldest is order. Yeah. And you mentioned that before, right? So for him, things being in the right order, things belonging in the right place, following the same pattern, separated, like order is like, I think like the main lens in which he experiences the world. things are in the right order, things are out of order, and they're somewhat chaotic because of that. And his sense of self and whether he's regulated is concerned with order. So like for him, he's never had like security blankets. He would write out numbers 1 to 20 or the alphabet, and it resembles some sort of order, and he's chill. Like, so I've been thinking about this with the Bible and how he engages with it, because order is actually quite a significant theme in the Bible. Like Genesis 1 and 2, like the start of the Bible is kind of the creation of an ordered creation and the days and separating things out. Like I picture my son separating different colored Legos when God separates the sky from the sea and the land and and all these things. And I've been thinking lots about kind of a slightly different lens to help him engage with the Bible. So instead of, I noticed it once when we read a kid's Bible and the opening chapters of creation were like, it was almost like God creating things was like, bam, from nothing came something. Bam, bam, bam. Trees, plant, duh. And he didn't quite get it. And then I just picked up the NIV and we read it, and it brought out a much more separating and filling and separating and filling and a rhythm and an order. And I saw his brain ticking a bit better. And I started thinking, is this framework of order something I should lean into? And so I've been thinking like the order in creation, the way that we're ordered to God and people and the priority of that, and sin as breaking the order of how God made, and Christ restoring things to how they should be, and the new creation, all of these things. What do you think about that? I don't know. I'm entering this phase thinking, is this a helpful way for me to be thinking? What do you reckon?
I think it's really helpful. I think it's good. I'm not sure how I would do it. I think I think it's helpful. We've done like a chart of the Bible with like the time periods and what happens throughout the Bible. I think that's been helpful for Dexter just to know. It's like, this thing came first, then this, then this. There's one big timeline, and you're here. God's returns here, and not thinking that it's all separate stories.
Yes. Yeah, it's helpful. What do you reckon? Any other thoughts you want to add to this?
Yeah. Look, I think God is a God of order, not of chaos. And like the start of the Bible is about creating order from chaos. Like the Spirit of God hovered over the deep, which is water, and water is very symbolic of chaos throughout the Bible. Even to Revelation, bad news for the surfers, there's no more sea, right? But again, that's a symbolic representation of chaos. In other words, there's going to be no more chaos. So order is a huge theme in God's creation and revelation as well. Our church services are to be orderly, right? It is. I think it's a good godly quality to be ordered. And our kids sounds like more for some than others. Like Mal, he likes order, but in a different kind of way. Like he will make a raft, but he would never write numbers. But he will put nails in a raft, build a raft out of old pallets, and but he'll know exactly what he wants to do. And just today on the way up, he's just come back from a school camp, and he complained that on the camp they had to build a raft, and the teams had to liaise with each other. The little kids had to, so before they went and grabbed the materials, they had to talk about what materials they wanted and then go and get it. And of course, he complained that the instant they said go, they were like just cats. They just ran and grabbed their own stuff, and then they were stuck with what they were picked up. And he said, no, if I had my choice, I would have grabbed this, and this, And so every kid processes their understanding differently. It's just important to try and work out as they get older that what works and what doesn't. And but order is a good thing. It is a good thing, and if you can highlight that, you're highlighting one of the characteristics of God as well.
Yes.
For them.
Yeah. That I have thought that as my kid has helped me understand a bit more of what God's like, as he really cares about order, and then joining the dots to, oh, I think God really cares about order, and almost seeing how my kid almost reflects the image of God in a way stronger than, I don't know, that dial is turned a little bit more up in his mind, I find. It's been really interesting. Um, uh, so keen to get your thoughts on this. And Geoff, you mentioned something about this before, um, but I'm keen for both of your thoughts. How do you help, um, like at the moment, as far as we know, I've got three kids, and one of them has higher needs, or one of them's on the spectrum and so that comes with some extra needs that come with it. And I'm mindful of uh, how to not let that overshadow the rest of the kids who maybe require less of our attention or help or something. Um, how do you navigate that with other siblings? Do you have thoughts? Geoff, you mentioned something before about how it's been really helpful for your kids to not be foreground and something of that. So yeah, tell us, give us your thoughts.
So for me, I look at it as kids want fairness, where you want for your kids equality. If you got three kids that are all different heights, to be fair, so that they can look over the fence, you actually have to give them different height ladders so that they can look over the fence. You don't just give one size ladder so that one can look over the fence and no one else can. You've got to actually be equitable.
And so you'd think, one kid might.
Yeah, so one kid does actually need more attention. But that's what's fair. That's what they need. That's equitable.
Yes. Though you also mentioned before that you found that quite helpful for the other kids. So having lots of kind of foster kids come through and helping your kids see we're trying to care about other people here. Like, tell us a bit more about that. I found that really interesting.
So we've had up to, I think, 11 kids in our household at one stage.
At once?
Yeah.
Do you mean not in total, at once?
At once. I'd recommend checking with your wife before doing that, rather than just saying, you can't get to my wife, just
because it's all short term, isn't it? It was like crisis, it's phone call. Yep. Come now. That's the idea, isn't it? Yeah.
So like I've found that my kids actually cared for the others like brothers and sisters, even though they weren't necessarily going to be around forever.
Yeah.
So I found it helpful that they're like, we do have more than just ourselves to be, or our family unit to be concerned about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also found it challenging because sometimes earlier on we had a small age difference between our youngest and the foster child. And so you'd notice just in the child, it's like they just come and push the child over for no reason.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe they actually do need a bit more attention because they're acting out in this way that's uncharacteristic of them normally.
Yeah.
But I think that helped them to grow because it's like we were able to see that and say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And work on that with them and help them to develop. And then they're much better.
I find that incredible. A little bit of me feels like I instinctively go, wow, what kind of character development would that breed in your kids? And it seems quite incredible. Like there's a compassion that they're living with and participating in that it seems unachievable in other ways than just doing it as a family and embracing and welcoming and all of that. And I find the other half of my reaction is like, oh, but my kids would be so, like, would I be doing what I need for my kids? I don't know why I have that reaction, because part of me, like, that just sounds awesome. And like instinctively, I'm like, I've known a couple of your kids as they're younger, but not as adults. But even just hearing that, I go, I bet these kids are pretty awesome adults. Like you can just tell, like that story writes itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I have this second half instinct. Maybe it's because Australia has such a idolization of family and putting your kids in this
Yeah, I think
spotlight.
we do want to put our kids first, and we do
Yeah.
want to grow them up well and give them opportunities that we didn't have growing up ourselves. We want them to have a better life than what we had. So I think that's natural.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what do I want? What do I think is more important long term? And it's not always about academic results.
Yeah.
It's like we just went away on a homeschool camp, and it's like it was the kid that was just kind to another kid or invited the other kid to come and play because they didn't know anyone else. That's the characteristics I want to see in my child.
Yeah.
And long term, it's like as an adult, I don't care what job you have. Have any job.
Yeah.
Be a plumber, be a toilet cleaner. I don't care. But character, that's what I care about long term.
Yes. Anything you want to add to this? Siblings, attention? Yeah.
Yes, I think from a responsibility to your natural family, the family that God's given you through childbirth, is cannot be neglected. It's very important to have to understand that your own children need you just as much as any children that come in from foster care, and it's and it is challenging for them. There's plenty of cautionary tales out there of children in foster families who are the natural children of those families who end up growing resentful, and they feel that they've actually lost a piece of their mum and dad. That they've missed out, and mum and dad's focus has been on these high needs that have suddenly appeared in the household, and so we have to be mindful of that. They have their own, and they are also in their own way learning their own. They're vulnerable at that age as well. They're setting their own understanding of the world through what they observe in you and the world around them, and we should be there alongside to walk with them at that time as well. And so it is a balancing act. It is really, but the benefits of bringing another person into the household that needs our care and love and nurture also cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
It is a good thing. It is a good thing to give that child who, by no fault of their own, is in an undesirable circumstance, to be able to give them a chance to experience belonging, to be part of a household, to have a sense of having a mum and a dad. That's precious. So it's a dilemma in a way. You have to nurture your other children, and it's not just the foster natural dynamic. It's also in an all-natural family where you have a higher needs, lower needs dynamic. And it's very difficult as a parent to give the higher needs kids the extra attention that they need without neglecting the attention that the lower kids need.
Yeah.
You know,
Would I be right in assuming that what happens, or maybe what would be good to happen, particularly as your kids get older, is that it becomes more group talk about what we're doing in this? Like, would that be part of the thing that helps, like...
So when you say group talk, as in within the family unit or outside?
Yeah, like, hey, we're going to be doing this thing, like... I don't know if you up for it? I don't know if you're looking for kids' permission, but like...
As your kids,
but kind of like this is a thing we're all doing as opposed to a thing mum and dad are doing. Is that a part in it?
Absolutely. If you can get the kids on board and understand the role that they play, that they are vitally important in the family as individuals, but also as the care that they can give their new sibling is wonderful, or the natural sibling. And kids grow up quickly in a situation like that. Sometimes they experience things they wouldn't have otherwise experienced, but it is good. Like my situation was that all three of my girls were much older. There's a 8-year gap between my youngest and then Mal. So when he first arrived, he had basically 4 mothers. All 3 of the girls took on the mothering role. They loved him. He was a new baby in the family. They just couldn't get enough of him. Now that he's a 10-year-old boy, he's kind of more annoying, but they also they don't love him any less. They just have a different relationship there. So.
I wonder whether that was the case, like noticing that gap. And even with you guys, and there's a big gap to Dex, like I'm assuming that in that space was a high amount of, that's when a lot, like how many foster kids how many have you had over the years?
To over 100.
Yeah.
I lost count. My wife kept count. she was much better at keeping tally. But yeah, I think for the youngest one, he doesn't remember it as much because we haven't done as many since he was born. He was like our last hurrah, and and I think it's been good. It's definitely been good for my eldest. That she's really caring and develops well from it.
Ah, that's helpful. So another practical thing, has discipline had to look different for kids that have had different needs? Sometimes I think about my kid on the spectrum and I think sometimes just the normal discipline things just have no impact. I think I need to think out of the box and try to do that understanding, shifting expectations. Is there anything you guys have noticed that and tried to work through in that?
Yeah. So discipline, I've found needs to be directly applicable to what they did wrong. So but at the same time, if you're out at the shops and that they do something wrong, then your discipline's limited for what you can do. But at the same time, if you go home, hey, maybe you can just de-escalate instead of having to discipline. So I think de-escalation is a much better option than needing to discipline. So we can just say, look, just go to your room for a bit, just calm down. And give them a chance to regulate themselves. Before having to ramp up. I don't think everything needs to be a punishment. It can just be a withdrawal.
I think that's like, so a thing I find, what feels like in my mind is what most people do for discipline is like you give a kid something they don't want or you take away something that they want. But for me, taking away something my kid wants is usually something my kid needs to regulate himself. And I'm taking away, when he's dysregulated and acting out, I'm taking away the one thing that is going to help him. And so I go, taking away things like, my kid's not sitting there playing video games, like, at his age, and it's just, and his temperament, we just haven't really brought that in. And I think he just sits for hours drawing things, and he loves it. And I'm like, I don't think this helps by taking this away. This is his remedy to be back in control. And so it's I've had that same thing where it's just been hard. Punishing is funny, and maybe it is that keep it as close and related, more natural, logical type consequences are much more effective. Steve, any thoughts you can add to that?
Look, I have to admit this has been one of the most challenging areas for me, but God has blessed me with a wife who absolutely gets it. And she's on at me all the time about connection before correction, right? And that's what she keeps trying to drum into my head, that there's a time when correction's just not going to work because they're so, like early on, probably about 8 or so years ago when we first started our journey with Mal, there was a book going around about flipping your lid. And when the kid has flipped their lid, you just can't, there's no point in actually applying any correction because it's not going to be effective. And not only that, it damages the relationship. So with kids with special needs in this respect, I think you really need to keep the situation calm and get back to a regulated, as Geoff said, regulated condition, I suppose, or get the tension down in the household, and then you can kind of move back in and say, now about what happened earlier, right? Now that we're both calmed down and we can talk about what do you think was wrong about that, and surprisingly to me, it actually seems quite effective that they can look back and say, yeah, I got angry and I got angry for this reason, and you can say, well, what you did while you're angry, was that a good idea? Was that smart? Or maybe was there a better way to deal with this situation? And it's an ongoing process. We have this quite a lot with anger management, but we just need to calm everything down again, and then have a new appraisal of what went on and how we could do it better next time.
That's helpful.
Not just for the kid, but for the parent as well.
Yeah.
Just on that, I'd say it's really important to know when you are getting past that point that it's like you're no longer super in control.
You flipped your lid.
You flipped your lid. It's like, rely on your wife. Your wife is there to help you. She is great.
She's got her lid on.
She's got her lid on. She's got it under control.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's good. Yes. And that connection before correction, that's helpful. Like, yes, the amount of times I found myself lying down with a kid who's melting down. It's like, we're just going to lay here together until we're all back to neutral. Yeah. Super, super helpful. Look, just broad question. That's a bunch of things that are interested for me, but things that you think would be helpful for me and guys like me who are earlier down the track navigating some of these sort of things. Do you have any other thoughts you would add into the mix?
Yeah. Well, I think like therapy where appropriate has been really good for our kids.
Yep.
Like whether it's OT, whether it's physio, whether it's speech therapy, that's been really good to help my youngest really understand those social cues that they don't pick up normally. I think, also just keep getting them into the word. Like that's what's important.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah, can't agree more with the therapies. Like if there's resources out there to help them deal with and alleviate some of the more challenging parts of being different. And we definitely have a lot of time spent with OTs, speech therapists, physios, just psychologists as well, just learning strategies, and then again, not just for them but for us as well. We need to be trained in how to be better parents with this new environment that we found ourselves in unexpectedly. There's heaps of resources out there. There's some really good things that you can. I mean, the internet's not the total authority, but there's some good stuff out there on it, on this area, and get other people to walk alongside you who've been down this path before. Enormously helpful to have their stories and their experience and their wisdom to kind of give you an inkling of how you can maybe make it work in your household. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Both of you, really appreciate it. Appreciate the time. Love the little insight into how you're thinking about dads, and to flatter you to an uncomfortable degree. I find it fairly inspiring hearing from both of you, and I really do. How you've approached it, what you've done with your families, and so I appreciate the time and the insights a lot. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right.